I'm going to just talk very briefly about the BBC in the Midlands, what my role at BBC Birmingham and what we're trying to do with the BBC in the Midlands. And I'm not going to talk for very long because I want to leave time for people to ask questions. So do think of questions. If it's really important, you can ask them while I'm talking, but it might be best if I talk and then we stop and do questions at the end. So just a bit of background about me. My name's Joe Godwin. I have two jobs, like most managers in the BBC do these days. I'm director of the BBC Academy, which is the BBC's training and skills division. So we do all the BBC's training, we run all the BBC's apprenticeships, entry-level schemes, and that's now based in Birmingham at the mailbox at BBC Birmingham. And we also do a lot of industry events for training, as it says in the BBC Charter that the BBC is required to ensure there is a well-trained media workforce. And as budgets and investment has been cut in various areas of the media, the training that the BBC can make available to freelancers and people who work for other broadcasters becomes even more important. And we do that through events that we run, through our funding and work with Creative Skillset, National Film and Television School. We've done events with the Royal Television Society at the BBC in Birmingham, and also we've got a very rich archive of training materials on the BBC Academy website. And the BBC Academy is based across the UK. As I say, we run all the BBC's apprenticeship schemes. Nearly 2% of our workforce are already apprentices. More will be so as apprentices becomes an even bigger part of the policy agenda. And we use our apprenticeships and our entry-level schemes, going back to the conversations we had earlier, to very much use them to engineer a different, more diverse workforce for the BBC. And all that operation is run from the BBC in Birmingham and has been for the past 18 months. Then I have another job, which is it was called Director of BBC Birmingham, and then from about 2 weeks ago, I think it's called Director of BBC Midlands. I wouldn't worry at the moment about what that means, because I don't know, so we won't be able to work that out today, but I'll work that out over the coming weeks and months. What it in essence means is, over the past few years, there has been a feeling in some quarters, and I think it's probably right, that the BBC forgot about the Midlands a bit. It forgot about Birmingham. Its attention was taken up by a place, and I'm not going to mention the name of the place. It sort of begins with M, it sometimes begins with S. We're not going to talk about it. That's part of the West Midlands problem, that we talk about that place too much and not about ourselves. A lot of focus up there. I have spent 30 years in broadcasting, most of it 28 and a half of them in children's content, ending up as head of children's programmes at the BBC, which I moved from London to that place in the north that begins with S about 5 years ago. So that's my background, a programme maker. I joined the BBC in Southampton working in regional news. I'm from the Midlands, I'm from Warwickshire. I've never worked for the BBC in the Midlands until this job. But because of the attention on the Northwest, because of the licence fee settlement, because of the changing economic climate, a whole variety of things. Also because of what other broadcasters did. There's a lot of criticism and throwing things at the BBC about its presence in the Midlands. Our presence is pretty amazing when you compare it to some of the other broadcasters, so it's worth bearing that in mind. But for all those reasons, Birmingham and the Midlands having been very much the UK's second media city, slightly fell off the map. We moved from our iconic home at Pebble Mill in 2004 to new premises in Birmingham city centre with the idea to be more modern, more cost effective and more visible. I don't think that entirely worked, partly because the visibility bit didn't quite happen as anticipated. And I think there was underestimated the huge affection in the hearts and minds of people in the Midlands and in Birmingham for Pebble Mill. But having said that, I don't think that was the beginning of the BBC's problems. I don't think that was the key moment in the BBC's problems in the Midlands. I think the key moment in the BBC's challenges in the Midlands was when in 2012, for what were very sensible economic reasons, it was decided to move a considerable part of BBC television and radio production from Birmingham to Bristol. And overnight, BBC Birmingham became empty, quiet, and a bit sad. So that was in 2012, and in 2013, Tony Hall took over as the new Director General. He came to Birmingham in his second week as Director General and thought, whoops, what's happened here then? The mailbox, it's a fantastic space, great office space, studio, production space, but it was 2/3 empty. Now, that is not what you would expect the BBC in Britain's second city to be. What you'd expect the BBC in Britain's second city to be is a vibrant, sustainable, mixed economy of production on radio, on television, online, corporate functions, all the activities the BBC do. You would expect some of that to be in Birmingham in a big, vibrant base for the BBC, and it most certainly wasn't that in 2013. So what Tony did, just cut out a bit of the detail here and just embarrass my friend Tommy first, was the answer to all that was Tommy Nagra, who some of you will have seen earlier on the diversity panel. Tommy was plucked from obscurity. Another elderly man working in BBC production, sorry boys, another elderly man working in BBC production was a man from Handsworth, Brummie, born and bred, was given the job of coming to BBC Birmingham and trying to revitalise it, trying to kick-start what the BBC was doing. And Tommy did that with great success. He was the first person really to be in charge of BBC Birmingham for quite a long time. I think that had always been a big part of the problem. There hadn't been for a while someone who would take responsibility for BBC Birmingham, not just to you guys to sort of represent it and to be responsible for it, but to pull it together, to fill it with confidence, to fill it with activity, and to reinstall a sense of pride in what we do here in the Midlands. So Tommy took on that mantle and did a lot of fantastic stuff. And then it was decided, had enough of Tommy, so let's get another elderly chap, this time a pink one, down from Manchester. And I was brought in because the BBC Academy, it was decided to move the BBC Academy to Birmingham as part of the plan that Tommy had been involved in to revitalise it, to fill that empty space, put stuff back in Birmingham. People doing things, important things that needed doing for the BBC. But not just that, not just activity and busyness and confidence and noise, but jobs, employment, people working there who then lived and worked and spent their pounds in the shops of the West Midlands. So it's as much about having those jobs and those opportunities so that people, young people who want to work in the media, don't have to do as I did when I was growing up in Leamington Spa. I think if I want to work for the BBC, I'll probably have to go to London. I mean, the end game for me would be that wherever you live in the UK, you could say I can have a meaningful, enjoyable, satisfying, creative career in the media where I live. I think that's the end game of moving production and investment out of London and the South East. So I came to BBC Birmingham at the beginning of 2015 with this dual job to move the BBC Academy to Birmingham, but also to take responsibility for three things. To reinvigorate the BBC's activity in Birmingham and the Midlands in terms of our base at the Mailbox. We've also got our drama village in Selly Oak in Birmingham, which makes 120 hours of BBC One drama every year. We have our training and research base at Wood Norton in Worcestershire. We've got 5 radio stations in the West Midlands, 3 in the East Midlands. We've got a production centre in Nottingham. To try and make that more than the sum of its parts, to try and help both people in the BBC and outside the BBC realise that we do a lot already. Stories that the BBC's abandoned the Midlands have been exaggerated. It wasn't the case. So tell the story of what we do better. That was the first thing. And so that's a big part of my job, to go around the place, whether it's coming here or having meetings with people, to make sure that what we do in the Midlands, people know about. So that's one part of it. That's the easy part. The second part is to say, rebuild the confidence. Having worked in the place in the Northwest for 5 years with BBC Children's, I'm very much aware that the confidence of that part of the world about the attractiveness of investment there, the media activity there, that confidence is self-fulfilling. It attracts confidence, it builds activity, it brings business to it. And I think we need to all collectively in the Midlands be much more confident about what we've got. We've got the nicest part of the country to live in. We've got fantastic infrastructure, we've got fantastic networks and connections. We've got great talent and skills, which is why it makes sense for the BBC Academy and all the BBC's apprenticeships to be based here in the Midlands. And we're right in the middle of the UK, we're a fantastic hub for things to happen. So I think it's about being confident, forget about other places and how well they did, and let's just focus on our strengths, our opportunities, and rebuilding that confidence. So that's part of what my job is outside the BBC, playing the right part in the life of the Midlands and in Birmingham. Because we retreated from that. When we retreated from Birmingham, we hid away. Well, there wasn't a me or a Tommy to do it anyway. So it's about playing our part in the city. That confidence that builds, and I'm going to talk about why I think that's already had impact in the past 3 years. That confidence will attract activity, it will attract attention, which will in itself then bring more jobs, more work, more creativity and more production. And I think just in the past 3 years we've already seen some evidence of that. So I think those 3 parts of what to do are all linked, and it's about building that confidence, being proud of what we do. I have another role, which is to go down to the BBC in London and say, if you want somewhere to do that, Birmingham's the best place to do it. So there's an internal ambassador and advocacy, bless you, role as well. So all that is the strategy. Now, when that place in the northwest was constructed with the writing of a very large cheque about 6-7 years ago, conceived way before that, that was conceived in a different economic era. There was a different licence fee settlement. We hadn't had the financial crash of 2007, 2008. It's also not the best use of your licence fee to keep moving people in their jobs around the country willy-nilly. Move them to Manchester, I said it. Move them to that place this week, or next week we're moving to Birmingham. There are limits in a BBC in today's economic climate about what tools you've got to move about. The BBC is trying to find a gap of £700 million in its finances. The BBC is shrinking. We've got fewer people working for the BBC than in the 30 years I've been there. So it's a challenging time to say we want to reinvigorate a place. And that's why it's my belief that the way to do that isn't by a great big piece of expensive intervention as we did in that other place. I don't think we could do that now. I don't know what we'd bring here and where we'd bring it from and where we'd take it from. So I think the only approach in the current climate, which is what Tommy and now I've been trying to do, is about incremental, more evolutionary, building confidence, but getting real results. This isn't a PR exercise, so actually we do bugger all, but we make you think we're doing lots. It's about doing lots, but being very clear that we always did do lots. 120 hours of BBC One drama, which interestingly a lot of people are a bit sniffy about because it's daytime drama. You don't watch it because you're at work, but millions of people do watch it. It makes millions of pounds for BBC Worldwide being sold worldwide. And as somebody said in the diversity session, these continuing drama series, like Doctors, are a key training ground for diverse talent because of the flow through of talent, production talent and acting talent in these soaps. They're amazing places to make real powerful change around skills, talent and behind the camera. Can't think what the next word is. Talent. So I think that's always been happening. We never stop doing that. We maybe stop telling people about it and being proud about it. There's another aspect to what we do, and I'm going to show you a show reel in a minute of some of the stuff that's made here, made by the BBC, made for the BBC, and some stuff that's not made here, but is about here. Because actually, portrayal of the Midlands, to my mind, is as important as creative activity in the Midlands. You need both. Peaky Blinders is a very good example of what I think has been a game changer. I have young kids said to me, I love Peaky Blinders because it's made being Brummie cool. And actually, it is really important that we make stuff in the Midlands, that it's jobs, it's skills, it's employment, it's activity. But equally important is that there's stuff that shows the Midlands, the voices of the Midlands, the stories of the Midlands to the rest of the UK. So in that sense, I'm not so bothered where Peaky Blinders is made. Great if it can be made here, absolutely brilliant. But that showing the Midlands to the rest of the UK is as important as doing stuff in the Midlands. And that's why Peaky Blinders, which does do a lot of filming in the Midlands at the Black Country Museum, that's why we at BBC Birmingham have put our arms around that and said, you might make it in Liverpool because Liverpool looks more like Victorian Birmingham than Birmingham does. I think we should be pleased that Liverpool looks more like Victorian Birmingham than Birmingham does. It's fine, but we're going to put our arms around it because it's telling stories and really importantly hearing the voices of the Midlands on BBC One, BBC Two in prime time. Same with Lenny Henry's fantastic drama Danny and the Human Zoo, which was largely shot in Dudley in the Black Country, but was telling stories about lives in this part of the world in a certain period of time. And actually, if that was filmed at Pinewood or Shepperton or Glasgow, I think it would still be important. This portrayal is very important. Citizen Khan, another thing that we talk about, and people say, well, why are you pretending that's got anything to do with BBC Birmingham? That's shot in Salford. Well, the studio is made in Salford because that's where they came up with the idea at the Salford Sitcom Showcase, and that's where BBC Comedy North has always been based. It was never based in Birmingham, it was always based in Manchester. I've said it again. But what we have done, and this is what we do at BBC Birmingham, and Tommy started this and I'm carrying this on, is we persuade them to film more of it in Birmingham. So Series 5 of Citizen Calm that's being shot at the moment, all the exteriors will be shot in Birmingham. When they weren't before, they were shot in Manchester or London. So it's these incremental, it's all sorts of things. It's the stuff we do in-house. Doctors, Father Brown, the Coroner, the Archers, Homefront, the Asian Network, Midlands Today. All the things that we make here, all the things other people make for us. And don't forget, when I joined the BBC and when Pebble Mill opened in 1971, every minute of every programme on every BBC channel was made in-house by the BBC. That isn't the case anymore. Actually, with the evolution of BBC Studios, which is putting BBC production out, arm's length commercial operation, and the removal of quotas, there will be a future when the minority of BBC content will be made by the BBC. So who makes it and what premises they make it on is not the key issue anymore. For me, it's about economic activity in the region, it's about inspiring young people with opportunities, as we talked about in the diversity session, and it's about portraying the region to the rest of the UK. So there are a lot of moving parts in this. It isn't the Pebble Mill model of we make it in our building and you watch it. That isn't today's model. That's the 40-year-ago model. So we have to think of different ways of doing it. And that's why the component parts of the story of the BBC in Birmingham and the Midlands are many. And I just want to show you the show reel just to give you a flavour of some of that, to show you the range of stuff made in the Midlands, about the Midlands, by the BBC or for the BBC. Thank you. So that's just a flavour of some of the content. That's radio, television, online content made in Birmingham, about Birmingham, in the Midlands, by the BBC, for the BBC. In addition to that, at BBC Birmingham, we talked about the BBC Academy. BBC HR is now headquartered in Birmingham for the whole of the BBC. A lot of the specialist BBC corporate functions have moved there, like BBC Security and other bits of the BBC Children in Need and BBC Trust. So already the BBC in Birmingham in the West Midlands feels like that big, mixed, sustainable headquarters that you would expect the BBC in the UK's second city to be. That's just the content. Anybody know how many people we employ in Birmingham and the Midlands? Have a guess.
2K? 2,000?
It's less than that, unfortunately. I wish you'd said less than the right answer. But in the mailbox alone, it's 750 people, and it's getting up nearer to 1,500 across the Midlands. It's a lot of people.
Lots of names.
Yeah. So it's lots of people earning lots of money, doing lots of jobs, having lots of careers, who don't have to go to another part of the country to do it. We've featured in there a couple of things. Digital Gorillas, which is a team we've got down in Faisley Studios in Birmingham, who are doing innovation work for BBC Three. You also saw English Regions News and Sport Online. So wherever you are in England, if you look at your BBC Local News and Sport page, it's subbed and published from our team in Birmingham. BBC Birmingham, since the 1920s, has always been a hub where things for the whole of the UK happen, and that's still the case with our online work. The Engineering Monitoring Centre in Birmingham, which is a fantastic thing to behold if you ever get the chance, is where all the local radio and regional television in England is monitored and controlled from an engineering point of view. Not well known, not very visible, but BBC Birmingham, from Pebble Mill and before that Broad Street and Carpenters Road before that, has always been a hub of UK activity, and that's what we're trying to make it again. And I think we're having some success. If the past had never happened, and you just woken up one day and said, I wonder if there's a BBC presence in the Midlands, I think that's quite a meaty, robust, large, sustainable amount of activity. The other bit that was mentioned in that tape, which I think is key, is what's the future strategy? And that was about BBC Three. So what I've spent the past 18 months doing, the bit of my job that's down in Broadcasting House in London, pestering people, people see me coming and turn the other way, doors get locked. They are fed up of the words Birmingham and the Midlands being talked about by me, but that's why we've made a difference. We've put it back in the conversation. It did fall off the BBC's map of Britain because other things took over the focus. We've put it back on the map, it's back in the conversation. No conversation happens anywhere in the BBC now without somebody saying, let's say it before Joe says it, what about the Midlands? That's why we announced last week Sports Personality of the Year is coming here, described unkindly in the Observer last weekend as a bogus bonus for Birmingham. Try saying that when you've had a few drinks. It's not a bogus bonus. This mixed economy, stuff we make here, stuff other people make here, stuff that's about here, has got to include the BBC's big travelling brands stopping off in Birmingham. That map of Britain's got to have Birmingham on it. Antiques Roadshow in Warwickshire last week, Question Time, Gardener's Question Time, BBC Breakfast at New Street, Sports Personality of the Year. They've all got to come through the Midlands. That's been part of our job as well. It's all part of the mix of presenting the Midlands and telling the stories and hearing the voices back to the UK. BBC Three is significant, and that didn't just happen because somebody in London thought, oh, we haven't moved BBC Three anywhere for a while. It's because of the work we've been doing to put Birmingham in the conversation. And what have you got to say about Birmingham if you talk about media? You've got to say it's Europe's youngest, most diverse city, and it's a region full of the digital skills everybody's struggling to find. So what would make sense? The BBC's truly innovative decision to make BBC Three its youth service into an online proposition with real innovation, a lot of it done in Faisley Studios already, to move it to be based in Birmingham, or a large part of it to be based there, including some of the people who commission some of the content for it. That's going to happen in the next 18 months. It really is going to happen. And I think when that does happen, we'll be able to say again that the BBC in Birmingham and the West Midlands is doing bits for all of the BBC. BBC Three is really important because in 20 years' time somebody will be sitting here having this conversation, and it will be laughable to think that the future of BBC Birmingham was to bring back big television studios to make dramas in or to run television channels from. We've talked earlier in sessions about on-demand and the way young people are consuming media. We've got to future-proof. If we're going to have a future for the BBC and public service broadcasting in the Midlands, we have to future-proof it. And that will be about digital content, on-demand content, young people and their skills, and understanding how young people consume media. So with the Asian Network, with our Digital Innovation Unit, with the Academy and our apprentices, and then with BBC Three, the BBC in the Midlands has a story no other BBC has about young, digital, diverse skills. So I think that really does mean that there's every chance somebody will be stood here in 10 or 20 years' time saying, well, actually, we're still here and it's really sustainable. We've got to put our money on the future, and that's not just technology, that's about young audiences. So that, in a short, breathless explanation, is the history, the present, and the future strategy for the BBC in the Midlands, and I'm very happy to take any questions. I just want to say that BBC Birmingham being forgotten about and not being as busy as it should be didn't happen overnight, and the revitalisation of it won't happen overnight. But what I've just described to you, going from the mailbox being empty, people saying they don't do anything in Birmingham, to that and BBC Three, has actually taken a little over 2.5, 3 years. It's a journey. This isn't the end of it. If I'm going to earn my money and have the job I've got, then I have to keep doing this, and there will be more. But going back to what I was saying earlier, this increased activity, increased pride, people talking about it. Not talking about somewhere else and how good somewhere else is and how unfair it is, but taking pride in what we can do here in the Midlands. That will build the confidence, and the smell of that confidence will attract more activity. We heard Colette talking about indie production. Part of what I do is connect people like Colette and other indies to the BBC commissioners who make these decisions, because it's about building up that wide ecology of production and creativity, which isn't just about the BBC, but using the BBC as an anchor to build a wide ecology of other production, talent, skills and opportunities for people. So that is all I have to say, and I'm very happy to answer any questions about it.
Are you looking to do any more development into Big Faisley Studios? Did the BBC use Faisley, or is Faisley now BBC?
The question, if you didn't hear it at the back, was about Faisley Studios. We've got a small team in Faisley Studios. It isn't ours. Faisley Studios is owned by Luke and Gray and is a great place for those of you who've not been there, for lots of startups, lots of creative companies. And we intentionally put what we call our digital gorillas there to try and let them be innovative and let them not, as it were, feel they were under the shadow of headquarters. I don't have any specific plans to expand there. The BBC, in our current economic climate, is not looking to take on any more property. It's a real challenge. Actually, with BBC Three, which is a lovely challenge to have, I'm not quite sure where we're going to put them. I think we'll have to start a night shift at the mailbox. But that's a nice challenge to have. It's a better one than how you fill an empty space. So I don't think we'll necessarily be doing more there. And also with BBC Three, who will be based in the mailbox, digital, innovation, publishing, social media for young audiences, I think that will become really part of what we do in the mailbox. Yes.
Right, I'd like to share something with you. I do appreciate what you're doing and what you're saying.
Thank you.
Now, I'm at the coalface. I'm on the technical side. I know a lot of people in Birmingham who are actors, and there is an enormous amount of upset that if you want to work on Doctors, it's cast and crewed from London rather than Birmingham. We think that's very unfair, and people say, oh, there's no talent in Birmingham. There's an enormous amount of talent in Birmingham, and they're hiring people from London. So many productions made for BBC and ITV in Birmingham actually made by cast and crews from London. And I'm not saying I'm an idiot, because I actually was the art director on Victoria for ITV. It ran 9 months, it cost nearly £20 million, and the Buckingham Palace set alone for the stage that was 34,500 square feet, and we were also shooting on location. You know, I can do it, and it's going to it actually wowed the executives of ITV. There is the talent in Birmingham, and people are not using it. And it's very sad that I've got to go and work in Yorkshire, in London, or in Glasgow to earn a living, because there's virtually no work for me in the Midlands.
But didn't I just say exactly the same thing? That's what I'm trying to do.
I'm not being hired in the Midlands. The last job I had was about 4 weeks on Doctors.
Well, I think...
I'm a member of BAFTA and the British Film Designers Guild as well.
And I'm a member of BAFTA, and I'm from the Midlands, and I've got a job here, and what I'm trying to do is to solve that problem. And as I just said, the last thing I said was the demise didn't happen overnight, the rebuilding won't, but we will. We're going to introduce more schemes to enable people from the locality to have placements on Doctors, use Doctors as a much more focused way to develop skills in the Midlands. Not all the talent on screen or behind screen in Doctors is hired and bussed up from London. That isn't the case. But if there's more to be done, we'll do it. But to do that, it won't just be about the BBC in-house. It has to be about the whole sector, ITV included. And so I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying that's what we're trying to do by building activity, building confidence, and jobs that people can do. Drama, and the people will say the same in the Northwest and even worse in the Northeast and in Scotland, still people using the heads of department that they know from previous things, and if broadcasting and production has retreated to London, then they're going to be London-based people. And it's part of what we're trying to do is to break that cycle by getting people opportunities on Doctors, by stuff like the filming of Citizen Khan in Birmingham. It's incremental, but yeah, I understand that it's not quick enough. But I don't think we're disagreeing with each other.
Thank you.
Mine is more of a comment than a question. I have to say that when I first met Jane Green 2 years ago, because I remember there was a seminar or conference I attended at the new library in Birmingham. That was the thing that was being really targeted from equity members, from production companies, saying everything's being taken away from Birmingham up to S&M and down to further down to Lower B. And I'm pleased to say, Joe, that I'm hearing now that you're bringing it back to Birmingham. We've missed it because we saw the demise of Pebble Mill over to the mailbox, and I agree it hasn't quite worked out the way I think, but I've been in there a number of times, and I have to say it is a great place. I have to admit that. But we have great landscape, great production companies, some good actors, and the job opportunity for the BBC to come back into Birmingham, which is what you're clearly doing from that.
I think it's also the job of the and I'm not for 1 minute going to say it's enough, but I was trying to be really clear. It's about a journey, an evolutionary journey. I think the BBC has a duty to show leadership, but the BBC can't do it all. And in the 18 months I've been sat in the mailbox looking out the window, I do look out the window occasionally, I have watched ATV Central on Broad Street be ground into a pile of dust and carted away in a lorry to build a bank on the site. I think the BBC is not it is the only game in town, apart from Des's operation, but I think it's really incumbent on other public service broadcasters to do their bit about production. I think Channel 4 do great stuff, particularly in the factual areas we've talked about. I think you said when Ian was talking, I wish the BBC would learn a lesson from you. We make far more hours of television in the Midlands than Channel 4 and ITV put together do. But so we should with the BBC.
Did you think that the two major feature films that are being filmed in the Midlands will bring more focus into the area? Because Tom Cruise has got a film.
Has he?
Apparently they're filming here. And
Tom Cruise is filming in the Midlands, apparently, for those of you at the back.
And there's another one that they've just finished filming here, which is a major Hollywood production. Do you know, put more focus into it?
I think the more high-end TV drama and film that can be made in an area will bring up standards and bring up activities. It's to show that it can be done here, the skills are here. It would mean heads of department and craft professionals can have a life and a home here without always having to be on the train or driving places. I think Steve Knight's idea about a film studio is very exciting, because actually there is a lot of studio space in Britain. A lot of it happens to be around the M25. But I think if his plan to build a film studio near the NEC were to come off, I think that would be great, because you could make television drama there, you could make movies there, you make TV programmes there. They make TV programmes at Pinewood, they could make TV programmes there. And I think then what that brings on is, over time, it allows craft professionals to be based in the region, and then they can have their apprenticeships and their trainees and the opportunities for new people, and then they stay in the region. So I think that's a very exciting thing. Yes?
I was going to say, with the encouragement of more programming to be made in Birmingham, would that see a decentralisation of the BBC's talent pool scheme? Because right now it still is quite London focused, in the sense that, you know, that the way they're recruiting for the lower level positions on a lot of television. Will that be, is there an idea to move that sort of though, so that it becomes a more regionalised thing?
No, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can separate it from where the production is. While we don't have as much production as we like, we won't have as many talent pool opportunities or apprenticeships. So I think the chicken has to come before the egg with that one. What we can do and are doing, and this is why it's so important that the BBC Academy is based in Birmingham, is increasingly setting up opportunities for apprenticeships and trainees, and wherever possible, making those placements and opportunities outside London. So we ran a local radio apprenticeship last year for the first time, which I think was brilliant, because it said to 46 young people, you can do an apprenticeship and work for the BBC, and you can do it where you live, because it's in your local radio station. So all 39 of the BBC local radio stations in England had one of these apprentices. They'd all come to Birmingham together for their training and inductions and so, and then go out. So I think there are innovative ways we can do stuff. But as I think I said in the diversity panel, I can't remember where I said it, the key to fixing diversity, and diversity in the broadest sense, which is about opportunities and about the BBC reflecting the United Kingdom, to me, the key to that is about putting production, activity, employment as far around the UK as we can. And that obviously includes the Midlands. Yes?
Hiya, I'm a filmmaker currently living in Leicester. If I wanted to share a couple of my films with you, would that be possible?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry, yes. I've done that joke twice today, so I apologise for that. Yes, although I don't commission TV programmes, I can watch it and tell you what I think of it. I can tell you who you ought to show it to. It is really hard, and this is nothing to do with me, Birmingham, Pebble Mill or anything. It's always been hard for individual filmmakers to turn what they do into television commissions, because generally the BBC and ITV and Sky only commission from established independent production companies.
I think it'd just be nice for you to see it.
I'm happy to do that.
Fine.
Yes?
It's a bit of a left field question. I work on the other side, ITV. With the rise of the BBC, you know, the BBC Academy, and also ITV doing traineeships, the big broadcasters are really now, like you say, the apprenticeship, rolling things out. I get asked by a lot of young people about entry into journalism now, especially. Do you think that the degrees now that they're paying grands and grands are worth it?
I think for some of the digital skills that we've got to bank on, I actually think vocational apprenticeship based is much better than going to university. It's also, there's good university and bad universities. There are media courses which are all about the symbolism of shadows in Portuguese dramas. That's not going to help you cut the top story for Midlands today. More vocational things about whether it's craft skills, equipment, or whether it's storytelling, because all television, all media is just storytelling. If it's stuff like that, could be good. I'd also say it depends how well connected the university or higher education institute is to people with jobs, because actually it's all very well to get a nice certificate, but what you want is to choose a place that's got the right connections in terms of placements. And so I think it's horses for courses, but I think the growth of You know, we do degree level apprenticeships in the BBC. Not many broadcasters do. You can get an MSc in broadcast engineering from the BBC, being paid to work on the job. So I think that would be much more sensible if you wanted to be a broadcast engineer than doing something else. I don't like saying people don't go to university, because I think people should get all the education they can. But I think there's with the huge focus on apprentices, which isn't going to go away, good apprenticeships, relevant apprenticeships, but it's all about the employability and where the apprenticeship is. I probably didn't answer the question, but okay. Any other questions before we're made to stop? Yes, there must be some more. Yes.
Thank you. We talked about the academy and about apprenticeships, but Rob and I were talking about people, say 40 plus, that want a career change. So if they wanted to learn about production or presentation or whatever, is there an avenue within the BBC or the avenues?
Well, I think it's really hard. I think it's always been hard. This isn't new. I think it's always been hard to change career. I won't use the word elderly, I'll say in later life. I think one thing the BBC does offer and always has is lots of quite inspirational training materials through the Academy website to help people understand what their roles are. I think the challenge for professionals who've got into their 40s or 50s is actually to get off one career path that you've been on that hasn't been about production, to get on one. You've probably got to go quite a long way back to the bottom, which most people in their 40s and 50s can't afford to do. And I think that's the challenge. I don't think that's a new thing. I think that's always been the case, sadly. Although, of course, it's much easier to make your own content now and distribute it yourself, which wasn't possible 30 years ago. Any other questions about anything? Well, about the BBC in the Midlands.
Can we give Joe a round of applause?